Baltimore Orioles, the most watchable fourth place team, perhaps. Like they're my MLB TV team. Like that is the team. I sit down. There's 12 games on at the same time, and I go, and I'm gonna watch the Orioles just because I like Rutschman and all the youth that they got going on. I guess I'm supposed to learn what a Ryan Mountcastle is, but like Gunnar Henderson, they've got so much talent and they should be a ton of fun to watch.
Man, Ryan Mountcastle, all he does is produce, actually, right? Like, isn't that funny? Like, no one thinks of it, and yet, like, he's probably going to hit like 30 bombs, and like, it won't be discussed at all, and like, it'll be, in the context of all these young guys just like killing it. And like, so if the Red Sox were the squinting team, right? Like, this is what the scouts would call, you dream on these guys, right? Gunnar Henderson and et cetera, and so some of the guys they've got still that are coming. So this is the dream on team, and those are fun too. And, I think it's really more a commentary on the division that we're picking them fourth than anything else. Because if you plug these guys in the American League Central, they're not finishing fourth. I don't see that. So, they're going to have to, grow up and continue taking steps forward. And as we know with younger players, that is not a given, right? Like there's going to be regression baked into this. But man, they're going to be fun to watch. They're on the right track. They've got a lot of talented guys, and they're all starting to come, arrive on the roster. They've got a difficult, mountain to climb because the other teams in this division are pretty darn good.
Yeah. In the sort of Ryan Mountcastle folder, I saw during the WC, Anthony Santander hit a homer, and on the screen it flashed that he had hit 33 in the previous year. And I thought, was he in the KBO? What? Like he was really good last year in the majors for the Orioles. And I just sort of, I think for such a long time, right? Because the Orioles, I'm trying to think of a more charitable way to say bad faith, but they were hard tanking, hard tanking. And they were doing it in such a way that they were more or less unwatchable, right? That I think myself, like a lot of people, had really snuck up on me last year as a non-Orioles head who's like aware of the picks they're making and aware of the general idea of where it's going, but not like, ravenously tracking what's going on in their minor league system. That when all of a sudden you look up during last summer and they are competent, it was a bit shocking because they had been the exact opposite for the preceding 4 seasons or whatever, right? And you just kind of I only have so much bandwidth. I just sort of don't, pay attention to it. And so to see it actually start to look like what they think it's going to look like is very interesting. I guess it's very intriguing. And I do, there is some, the rotation again, a bit short. Their 2 best pitching prospects. Rodriguez and DL Hall, right? Please don't tell me he's a third baseman. That's going to be really embarrassing.
I gotta look it up.
Come on, please get this right, Andy. One-time National Baseball writer. He's a pitcher.
Got him.
I wasn't gonna tell you.
Yeah, Hall and Rodriguez are not going to make the big league club, which leads to the reasonable skepticism that there's service time manipulation or whatever going on. What Mike Elias said the other day was just no, they didn't pitch that well. Specifically, Rodriguez couldn't get out of the 4th inning in spring training, so we're not going to have him make his debut, and he's not pitching well. But it's like when you do the hard tank, right? You don't get the benefit of the doubt as you make decisions coming out of it, and I think that will be a very interesting intellectual sort of exercise as the Orioles, move into this next phase. But I think in a pure aesthetic perspective, as Grant said, they're going to be fun to watch. They got a lot of good young players on the position side. So that should be, entertaining.
Dude, when Cedric Mullins is the hardened veteran, speaking of fun players to watch, right? I mean, they're dynamic. They're like Cleveland in that way. There's just a bunch of players up and down the roster where you're like, man, I'd watch this guy play. And yeah, if they were playing alongside Cleveland, that would be a lot more interesting as far as where they would place in the division. Unfortunately, they're in the East, but credit to them. There's no guarantee that tanking works. there isn't, but it certainly seems like they are on the right track and that they're going to hit on a few of these guys, and that's a good thing.
It seems like for every 5 tanking teams, there's one Orioles that all of a sudden has amassed all of these top prospects at once, and the other teams are like, oh man, oh nuts, we missed. The Orioles have that right now. Now, I will say that they're playing a funny game with Grayson Rodriguez because it's one thing when you have a 21-year-old hitter, because you can project their prime out 5, 6, 7 years. You can say, when he's 27, he should be the best version of himself. With pitchers, you're not guaranteed that this stuff is going to be there next year, that he's going to have as many bullets next year, 2 years, 3 years. If you're playing a service time game with pitchers, I don't know if I like that, because you just put those bullets in your rotation now.
So what they are, and this is what Michael Elias said yesterday, is they're not manipulating service time. He didn't pitch well this spring.
Right.
The problem is that when you behave in this sort of fashion, for 4 or 5 years leading up to this, right, people just don't believe you.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about with like the benefit of the doubt. Because like, I would suspect that if Rodriguez came out and looked really good, he'd be in the rotation. That's more or less what Elias said. Like, they know that, I think they understand that pitchers are different than hitters. It just seems like in this specific case, he hasn't pitched well. So they don't want him to make his big league debut when he's not pitching well, when they have other guys on their roster with big league experience. They don't want to send that message to the clubhouse. The problem is that when you've conducted yourself in a certain way, the public is just like skeptical of it. And that's one of the downsides of the hard tank.
Can I read you a quote from Michael Elias about Rodriguez? Quote, he was not ready to jump into a major league rotation, just getting not past the 4th inning. And we know what he's capable of. I wasn't expecting this. We were hoping he would show up as a better version of himself. End quote. I hate that last sentence. I don't think that should be said about a 21-year-old pitcher.
Why?
I don't know. Like, we were hoping it just like it puts it makes him sound like a dullard who wasn't doing the off-season training regimen or something.
Well, they wanted him to pitch better. He didn't play well. They're disappointed. It's professional sports.
Woo!
That's why I couldn't make it. That's why I topped out division.
This is why you never could have played for the 2014-2015 Royals.
No shot. No shot. Hit it. But like, there it is. Now, this conversation reminds me of something that Andy and I have been talking about of late. And when you look at the sport, right, we're entering this phase where it is very clear that if you're a team like the Baltimore Orioles, that, when you like think of all this talent, how much of it are they gonna actually keep for the long term?
Mm-hmm.
There are things that you have to do, as far as like confronting this reality, that you're gonna have to behave a little bit differently. And I think what Grant was talking about with Grayson Rodriguez in particular, do you know if this stuff is still going to be here? That might be one of those places where it's like, hey, you roll the dice with them because you don't know how long you're going to have these guys, especially pitching. You really don't. So like, why not just deploy it, especially when, Baltimore's in that small market bucket where, I mean, good Lord, they're going to have to pick one of these guys to keep, right? If it all works out well, that's like the best case scenario, is that the pipeline keeps flowing and one or two of these guys sticks around somehow. Maybe they, get lucky and like do the Atlanta Braves, like extend them, when they've had 10 at bats, right? Like that sort of thing. Like, but my point is like, they're going to have to operate now in a different way to maximize the window. And sometimes it's in conflict with how they got here to begin with, right? With the hard tank, they're entering a different phase. They're going to have to start making decisions in a different way and in a different frame. And I'll be interested to see how that part of it plays out. Because like now that you've got him here and like they look like they're on the right track, how are you going to keep him? That's the next challenge for any club. And it's tough for the fans too, right? Like they all know that too. Like it's almost like when I think it was the owner of the Guardians, right? Dolan telling Zach Maizel about Francisco Lindor, enjoy him while he's here. Enjoy, right? Remember that? Like, and I remember thinking, my God, that's harsh, but it was also honest and it was true.
Yeah, right.
So, and like, that's a lot of teams, including the Orioles, that face that. And now they've got a bunch of scenarios here where they might be saying about Adley Rutschman, So,
well, I can think of one way they could keep Rodriguez for an extra year. It's like 15 days of patience.
we'll move on from the Orioles, but I can see there being like if you are concocting how the Orioles make the postseason, can they? Absolutely. There are a lot of different permutations that get them to the postseason, but I also think there is a permutation where they're just short of the postseason and they're looking up and they're like, boy, what if we didn't give X number of starts to Kyle Bradish and we gave him to Grayson Rodriguez from the start? Oh, whoopsie doodle. I don't know, man. Like I
would say just to like again, and I know we need to move on from the Orioles, but I would say that it is possible that some of the disdain you're perceiving from Mike Elias in that quote is related to him understanding that and him wanting to put the ball in Grayson Rodriguez's hands and Rodriguez not doing enough to earn it.